Jamie Teacher, would you please pray for us?
God, great Heavenly Father, Lord, we love you. We thank you so much for the opportunity to come together, Lord, and just be together doing the business of the county. I pray that you will please guide our pathways and our direction, our votes, Lord. I pray that we realize all the folks we're affecting, Lord, throughout the whole county. And I pray that you please just allow us to know that even the money that we spend, we need to be good stewards because we are not our own, Lord. We love you, praise you, thank you for the sacrifice you gave. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Before we approve the agenda, County Mayor, see here? He had requested that we add to the agenda outgoing EMS chief Class A uniform, I guess for giving to the outgoing EMS chief. So without objection, I want to add that as item J. With that, I'd like a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Commissioner Show, second by Commissioner Teachman. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right. Agenda approved. Have approval for minutes. Moved by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Teacher. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right. Minutes approved. Recognition of the public. We have two citizens signed up. Mrs. Charlotte Rivens, if you would please come to the table and state your name and address for the record.
I will.
And 5 minutes.
Okay. My name is Charlotte Rivens. I live at 2339 Highway 25. I brought pictures. I wanted, most of you, I don't know, that have seen the Draper house. So that's exactly what it looks like. And I'm going to read because I know I want to make it short. I know y'all went over a lot of options at that time. One was to complete. I think there was another one to go ahead and demolish was brought up. And, let's see. Or was demolish the Draper house, but keep the post office. Although the post office doesn't have a restroom, electrical is disconnected from the outside, there's no heating, and there's a top building stove was in there, but the pipe is just down in the garbage. And there's a lot of mold and water there too. Then another option was to raise the Draper house and the post office above the flood level, and the county pay for the expense of bringing the buildings back up to code, which you can see how expensive that's going to be. Then another option was that there's a community group that wants possession of the Draper house and the post office and the community center, and they would bear the expense and cost of bringing the property up to code and build a new community center. Now, I personally think the county needs to put everything up for sale. That's just me, to put it back in the coffers. Because we have a lot of expenses right now that we say we don't have the money for. So, and then you could change the discussion of how much it's costing us to change or do stuff, so let's use these funds for another project. Now, if you're decided to give or let a group of citizens use the properties, because of what they look like, we should at least require an actual stamp and approved set of blueprints. A licensed contractor should be used that can furnish a construction and performance bond and a timeline of start to finish. So if they don't have the money to do what they ask to do or want to do, we don't have to keep looking at that for another 4 or 5 years. There's got to be an answer for everybody, I would think. I know you can't do that or say anything, but I just wanted to see, let's just see what it looked like. So when you try to decide what you're going to do, you actually see what it is and what you think it may cost. So I just don't want to get up every day and see a bunch of tents and porta-johns across the street or down there because nobody has the funds to finish something. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivers. Next up, we have Mr. Padgett.
No, you're not better than give me a minute.
Can you state your name and full address for the record?
Wayne Padgett, 279 Bursby Branch Road. I had no more to sit down when I spoke to y'all fellows last year, and the statement was made that what I presented was not factual. Now, y'all recognize this letterhead? It says Sumner County Government. Now, all this stuff that we talked about has been through planning, finance, and budget. We made a contract with FEMA. And I was brought up, when you give your word and you make a contract, that's your bond. Now, I understand this is gonna try to be broken. The county has already expended $125,000, it's right here, to buy the Draper property. FEMA told us, as part of their contract, they would pay us back 87.5% of it. 12.5% come to the state, 75% from FEMA. Now, if y'all decide to break that contract and go any other different route, you're going against what I was told about this commission when you were sworn in about being a conservative commission. Now, this is a no-brainer. All it has to do, just like one of the commissioners brought up last time, is let the county mayor go forward with what the original plan was. And it's just like Charlotte mentioned a while ago, when you got a group out there that don't have any money up front, they got big ideas of what they want to do, but it takes money to make something happen. Y'all all know that. Now, you've been offered the option of selling the property. A guy stood right here and said, have it appraised. If you want to get rid of it, don't like it, don't want to have it, just sell it. And you've already had some offers on it. But if that's not within the value, sell it to the highest bidder. And we'll get rid of that and get it off y'all's backs, I guess is what it is. But I just hate to see Sumner County's name go down in history as we broke a contract with FEMA. Because it was a legitimate deal, just like I said, it's all on paper. I don't tell nothing up there that ain't factual like it was mentioned before. And I think most of you have met me and been to my house, a lot of you have. And if there's any question you have on anything, come to me and I'll show you the paperwork. Thank y'all.
All right, that concludes public comments. For the chairman, I have none. For the county mayor, looks like he's absent. Old business. FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant property located at 2268 Tennessee 25, Cottontown, Tennessee 37088. And Commissioner Klein, would you mind picking back up on this where we left off from last month? And as you guys know, we disposed of the property of the old general store of completing the FEMA grant. So that's already been done. And
Has it been done?
I don't know if it's been done. We voted last month to do it. I don't know what the county mayor has moved forward with. But what we're left with now is what it was on your spreadsheet, Commissioner, from last month in the minutes of property number 2, historic post office, and the Draper house. And would you mind running us through these scenarios, kind of like where we're at with this second property? What is factual about how much money that the county was always going to lose on this bad deal, as well as the real numbers that are factual about these properties?
Well, this was always going to cost the county money because we had to pay a percentage of the amount that was going to be expended. At the time, the FEMA organization had agreed with the numbers that were present in 2019 that the maximum that they would pay would be $205,450.
For the original contract.
For the original contract. The amount of money that we would have spent at that time would have been a bare minimum, I believe, of $111,000. I don't have that specified on here. But because of increase in property values, increase in everything over that really 4-year period, we needed to put in for an increase in budget to FEMA. However, we didn't know about that. We were not made aware of that until I started crunching these numbers with Ms. Northrup.
So, when we put this on hold and we found out about this in September, it wasn't disclosed to us by county mayor's office or the grant writer that any of these issues would occur.
Yeah.
Over all the months of meeting in September, October, November, December,
We had no idea really about the specifics of the agreement. And it wasn't until I got into the actual numbers with Mrs. Norfleet, item by item, as indicated on this spreadsheet, what was actually going to be expended. What we need, because, and this is an interesting thing, because the $205,450 was the maximum for the project, that did not matter whether we did both properties or just one property. $205,450 was the magic number. So what we had with all of the overruns, it increased it greatly, but by the time we found out that we could put in for an increase in budget, it was too late.
but the total FEMA cost, $364,915.
Yes,
And we were only going to get reimbursed $205,000.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. And had we known and wanted to go through with scenario one, we would have been able to increase it, the maximum amount of about $48,000 and change. But that timeline is passed, and the deadline is in June. December was the absolute latest we could have done anything, and of course, as I said, we didn't know anything about that. So, if we were to go through with the entire program as it was originally contracted, we would lose, the total cost to Sumner County would be about $179,000. What I did is I looked at really the only scenario that we had available to us at that point, which I call scenario 2, was to leave the post office where it is, leave the Draper house where it is, because in all actuality, the elevation of where we were going to move the post office and the elevation it is at right now is not very different above sea level. So I thought, well, let's look at the minimum costs we have to spend on things. If we don't move the post office, that's $63,690 that we won't have to spend.
No, it's actually 73 for 15,000.
Yeah, well, the 10,000 is for a foundation. So if we wanted to build a real foundation under it, it'd be another roughly 10,000. So that's about 73,000 that we won't have to spend. The Draper house, to demolish that would cost us about $6,000. I'm saying we forego that as well, because we don't know what the people of Cottontown are going to want to do with either of those buildings. And so if we don't demolish anything like we did the old schoolhouse and the general store, which admittedly I had never been through, but I have been through the Draper house, and it's a solid house. It's an old house. It absolutely would need some renovation. But as far as the floors are solid, the walls are solid, it's a solid house. And I would attest to that as a former builder. At the end of because we are allowed a maximum of $205,000 in reimbursements, we would fall within that if we stayed where we're at right today, and rather than costing the county, it'll only cost, the difference will be $13,511, so we'll spend $13,511 less if we stay where we're at today than if we were to go through with the original program. So, in my opinion, because we don't know what's going to happen with that Cottontown and downtown area, or who is going to be overseeing whatever development may happen, we can always demolish that Draper house. That can happen anytime. But if we demolish it, and whoever comes in wants to do something with that downtown area, if they have to build a building the size of the Draper House, it's probably gonna cost $300,000 or $400,000. So I'm saying the renovation on that building would be a lot less than building a new facility. So, and I believe it has historic value because the same guys who ran that post office lived in that house. They're adjacent to each other. It could be a historic gift shop. It could be a lot of things. But I don't see any purpose in destroying that like we did the schoolhouse and then having to build something there after the fact. Whoever, whether it's us or a 501c3 organization that wants to come in and have the support of the population there to do something, they can raise both those buildings with higher foundations. There's many things they could do to get out of the floodplain. And as I said last time, the only building that is currently in the floodplain for sure is the Bridal House. It's the one at greatest risk. So, that said, it would be, we're not hurting anything by staying there. And then we can pursue what to do with the Bridal House and what to do with the old school property and all of those things based on the population and what they want to do.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, based on the numbers that steps out, it doesn't make a difference, like say the county wants to keep it and they want to destroy that house and they want to move the post office, it doesn't make a difference if we do it now or then. Based on what happened, it's not going to, we're not out any money.
We're not out any money.
It's just the basic.
So said it another way, because we did.
But do you want to make a motion for this real quick?
I would like to make a motion that we stay right where we're at. We collect the money on the old store.
That's already been done. This is strictly
Okay.
on this property, historic.
That we make no more progress on it at all, that we leave it exactly the way it is until we find out from the citizens of Cottontown what they want to do with that critical area, which is what they would consider their downtown. That's my
So we have a
motion.
motion, we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner. Discussion?
So I just want to, because I'm going to make this, because we did a commentary earlier about FEMA making a payment basically, and you kind of explain that, but the bottom line here is that, yes, we get money from FEMA, but we also have to spend money to make money. And it nets out actually the other direction.
Correct.
And you lose the building.
Yes.
Just summarizing everything.
Yes.
Super simple.
Mhm.
Is that, everything I just said is true?
Everything's...
Has Astor's house been secured? Is there a chance that it might be vandalized beyond doing anything with it? Or what is the status of it right now?
You know, anybody can walk in it right now, and I would ask the mayor to send the maintenance guys up with some door hardware and be able to lock it and the post office.
Post office open too.
The post office is wide open, so that we don't have it vandalized. Maybe we even want to put some signs up that say, county property, do not enter. I'm not sure, probably Josh Sudduth could help us with that. But it would be best, I mean, I'm kind of amazed it hasn't been vandalized to date, but it hasn't. Neither of those buildings have been vandalized, from what I can tell. I don't know, less than a couple of months ago. So, I think the maintenance guys, you know, for a few $100s, they can go up and put door hardware in them, lock it, and secure both buildings.
What is the criteria that we're looking for from the community in order to make this decision? I mean, when are we going to go forward with this motion here? What are they going to bring us? That's what I would like to know.
Talking about the Cottontown community?
Yeah, I mean, whoever, whatever, if that's what his motion said was when the Cottontown community makes a decision. What's the criteria for that?
you know, I think maybe we're putting
So-
cart before the horse.
Right now, we're just basically giving an option, in my understanding from what Commissioner Klein's motion is to, because we're not saying, well, if we decide to vote in the affirmative of his motion, it doesn't take off the table that if we wanted to still tear that house down and move the post office, because it doesn't make a difference if you do it now or in the future. We're still going to be out the money. It's like, and FEMA's not reimbursing us for that money.
I
We're not.
just was wondering, you know,
So-
do something, what, get off the spot, you know?
Yeah, what is the plan?
I mean, part of it, I know we had put a request in when we're getting sued over the Bridal House property, so I think part of that is just waiting for whatever,
We got a suit in progress.
for one of the things that was asked for the community. The second thing is you've got individual people wanting to buy back land, and you've got a nonprofit that has been formed that is going to be coming back with their new paperwork of a 501c3. It's a nonprofit entity for the Cottontown Community Center property, and as far as these properties and managing those, I mean, I can go ahead and rehash the whole, you know, several speeches from the past couple of months if you like that, but.
Oh, do you know anything about the suit?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I mean, we're up in the Historical Commission right now, State Historical Commission, so we've got some hearings set up, but my advice at this point would be to hold status quo until we've had some
So
resolution out of that
it's
one.
basically stalling point.
Yes.
So, not demolishing this. It does at some juncture take off that $100,000 reimbursement that we could still get if we demolish it now, but it leaves on the table. We still have the building. We have all of these, we just listed 3 or 4 different options. And we have, I know that suit is specific, that complaint is specific to another property, but what I'm hearing is, when in doubt, leave things alone when you're in the middle of a complaint, which is probably good advice. So you gotta, I know where I'm going on this, given all that.
I'd just like to amend his motion to say, until we get some kind of resolution on this suit, we just take this thing. There's no need to discuss this anymore.
Well, we're voting,
Yeah.
what we vote tonight, is done for now, and so, I mean, you still want to make your motion or second?
Well, I mean, if we're done talking about it, you know, there's no need talking about it until we find out what's going on in courts.
Okay. Well, and I might, correct me if I'm wrong, if I misspoke, by not moving forward, basically, you can move, the 2 options here is move forward, the scenario 1, tear the building down, move the post office, and you're out $179,000. Option 2 is you don't do that, and you're only out $165,000.
The only thing I know is, if in the future, we do decide to tear it down, then
We would be, I guess,
you're kind of, you know, you're not gonna be able to recoup that thing. That's like the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I misspoke there.
But I get that point.
But it's what do you want, you know, the fact that the community, this all started because the building got torn down and nobody knew about in the community except for a few select people, evidently, and that they wanted to do something about it, you know, and had wanted to save and preserve that. And tearing that down, and that's not part of the FEMA plan. That was just county money, tearing that down. Wasn't a part of any plan, we've since found out. So yeah, it just depends on what, you know, do we want to do right by the citizens on, you know, having input on what that area becomes and not letting it be used as the impetus for things like greenways through TDOT grants, which are already on the table, have been on the table years ago, and to be able to do, and when you look at those properties, it's a mighty fine line down Upper Station for that, so that's a very clear process. You know, it really comes down to, I know what my constituents have asked me to do, so you have to make a decision what your constituents have asked you to do, but I have, you know, I want to vote on this in the affirmative to protect and preserve these for the community, because that was the request and the ask, so that majority of the people that I've heard from in the community, so I'm going to
Commissioner, I have a question, just for information. If he can answer, how broad is the authority of the state historical?
This is new ground for me, but it's broader than I thought it was. And that's why my advice would be to table any of the other properties as long as possible, because what I foresee happening is whatever you decide to do from this point forward, we'll get married up with an existing clause, and then we will be attacking this from many different angles than just the one we have now.
I know I'm going to vote on this, because one of these ways, it's different rationale, I think, than what you put out, but it leads to the same conclusion. One leaves all the options on the table, the other doesn't. But, all that said, and that's just a comment, it seems pretty crazy to me that you could tell that there's a statute out there that tells a government organization or any organization that they can't do something with property that they got gifted to them, ultimately free and clear, 5 years ago. It's nuts to me, but that's just commentary.
I can tell you that a lot of this new law started as a result of some incidents that happened in Memphis, Shelby County, where items were voted on and acted on within 24 hours.
Gotcha.
And that's what the commission is trying to rein in.
Gotcha.
That's what I've been...
Gotcha. But it's been applied here, which is a totally...
Yes. We're playing the other side.
Yeah, I get it.
All right, we have a motion on the table. We have properly seconded. Is there any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Commissioner Rogers is a no. And that motion passes. That is some discussion of that, Commissioner Rogers. New business, Veteran Service Report and Presentation. The Veteran Service Director has asked to come and speak to this.
Sure. Jeff Oakey, I'm the new Veteran Services Director, and I just asked for a couple minutes to outline about what we've been doing. And I think there's a report in the package. We've been a one-man shop for the last 3.5 months, and we've been managing to keep ourselves running about 67% of the touches that we had before that. Got a couple of, our next available appointment, unfortunately, as a result of that backlog, is not until about tax time, so we are booked up about a month out. We've tried to see as many veterans as we can, keep time free from when we have deaths or other emergencies dealing with veterans, and we're able to go visit them. But generally, our next appointment is not for a month away. Three stories that we had a lady walk in who's a spouse of a veteran. The veteran had made a mat there previously while he was succumbing to dementia, and we were able to get $27,000 of what the VA said was debt waived by the VA. She came in because she went to the hospital. We were able to get her in for get medical insurance for the veteran, signed up so that he could get treated at Southern Regional. We also had a 3-time Iraqi freedom and very freedom. So an Iraq-Afghanistan vet came in. He had just separated from the military service, was looking for a job here in Sumner County. We were able to give him 90% disabled disability compensation for a couple of wounds and some other damages he incurred in the military service. And we had a veteran from Portland, I believe, Mr. Ober, who had a 1-week turnaround. He found that he had lung cancer and he's a Vietnam veteran. We were able to get him full disability compensation. So he's able to kind of continue on with his treatment and not worry about paying for his house. So that's the kind of stuff we've been doing, and we've been doing quite a bit of it. We're probably, we're getting kind of a good reputation as the best service office in Middle Tennessee, and we'd like to keep it that way. So to that end, we thank the commission because we were able to bring on our full-time employee, so we have a new full-time run. She's completed all of her prerequisite training. She'll get certified in April, and we'll look to pick back up the pace.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what you do. Appreciate it. All right, there's no action on that. Item B, accepting the bond for the finance director. Move for session. Second by Commissioner Rogers. I don't see any package with this. So is there anything we need to know about this? Is it standard procedure, I assume? Our yearly bond? I'm going to make that assumption. I'm going to assume so. Do what?
I would say there probably is, can we pass it with the intent of it being the same? Never doing crazy, we'll bring it back.
Well, it's, you know, we'll pass it before it's going to go to that full commission.
Right, that's what
So
I'm saying.
I guess we'll, all right. Second by Commissioner Rogers, motion by Commissioner Show, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Item C, amending personnel policy for the Sumner County Highway Department, which is attached. I move for discussion.
Yeah, I would like to get you on this one.
All right, go ahead, Commissioner Show.
I've spoken with, I don't want to get into too many details on this, but I've spoken with Mr. Walling on this, and this definitely has budgetary
Okay, that was going to be my question.
implications.
Okay.
And I don't have all the details.
I had two questions for you. Does it increase next year's budget anyway, and does it increase our maintenance?
Unsure. But with an unsure assumption, I don't think it's probably a good idea to make a move on it. But I believe it's at least something was on the employee compensation. We changed from when, I had to find this, an estimated eight days versus 10 days, or 8 hours per day for a 10-hour assumption, or for off time. And I'm pretty sure that's going to have implications on there.
Commissioner Teacher?
Let's say, Mr. Ellis spoke to this a little bit at Highway Commission. We didn't go in super detail because he was just making us aware that he was passing it on to here. But in the past, from what I understand, in the past, the way that it's worked is, you know, the Highway Department works 4 10-hour days. And in the past, if they wanted to take off a day or if they had a sick day, they would take off and get 8 hours granted by the county. And then they would have to take 2 hours of personal time in order to make up that day that they were losing. You follow me on that? And then that's where he's wanting to make the change to where it actually would just cover their day that they're off, which is actually 10 hours.
Well, I get that, but all of this is based on a 40-hour work week.
Sure.
And the counter argument to this is, they can manage those hours however they want. If they choose to manage those 4 by 10 versus 5 by 8, that's on them. But it doesn't change what is standard compensation for an off day. I mean, that's...
Would you like, you guys want to suspend the rules on that? That's
Sure.
Highway Superintendent, someone speak to this?
Thank you. What we were looking at, and Jamie was kind of making a comment about, is our holiday pay. We work 10 hours. I think Sonny, a lot of his guys work 12 hours. And it's been done throughout each department to where it's based on your workday. And so what's happened, because we all, this year we had, I think, 17 or 18 paid holidays because of the campaign. So you take somebody that has been working for the department less than 3 years, they have a week's vacation. And so you get in a situation where you're taking 36 hours of your 40 hours, they're covered for a full week, so we're giving them something and thanking them for something, and then we're punishing them because they're having to put 2 hours. Well, it's not, our budget is based on 40-hour work weeks.
Right.
And so it's still a 40-hour work week. So they're not getting overtime, they're not getting anything but just the straight time that they deserve. So the implications is really not there. They're just getting their 40 hours. When we work over or do something, that is comp time. We get comp time and we don't pay overtime. So the implications is just, in my opinion, is making a wrong a right, just like other departments have done. And it's not just us, it's other departments that pay the holiday pay the same as the workday, and we're just doing the same thing.
Have you spoken with our finance director? I mean, again, my question is, does this increase our budget for next year in our maintenance number? you know, financial impact?
I will talk to him, but no, my answer is no, not in any form or fashion.
I would like to make a motion here, and that is well, I don't know, I just like to convert this and roll this into the budget discussion so we can have that conversation. And, you know, this can all be built up into one discussion of how, you know, we're going to talk through compensation for the next fiscal year anyway.
But if it's done in other departments
I understand.
already, then it really shouldn't be a compensation question, because they're just getting the 40-hour work week.
I mean, it may be a compensation for it, it can be a compensation question in the other direction. So, I'm just saying, I think we should defer because there are potential, I don't want to put something in here that's not actual motion.
I'll second that to defer, and we have a discussion, Commissioner Clum.
This may be a strange or a foolish question, but if the road department works 4 days a week, and let's say it's Monday through Thursday, and the day off is Friday, what happens there? Because do they get, is it like double dipping on that day?
Talking about if a holiday is on their regular radio.
Right, if they normally work Monday through Thursday, and then the holiday is on Friday.
So that would be what I would, and I'm not trying to speak for the highway department, but I would think that would be what's called a floating holiday. They could take it the day before, or the day after, that normal scheduled work day, they could take it that Thursday or the following Monday.
That's correct.
That's correct.
And I think in other departments, what we've done, speaking from the Health and Emergency Services Division, is typically those guys work 12 hours, so we make their holidays 12 hours, we make their sick days 12 hours, so that way it balances out. And just like you said, you know, we're not asking you to take an 8-hour holiday, oh, by the way, you've got to use 2 hours of your vacation, we appreciate you, but we want you to pay this back too.
I get the logic. I totally get the logic. I'm not even saying no. I'm just saying like, you know, let's just run the numbers.
Right.
We have a motion on the floor, we got probably second, any more discussion?
I got another question on that. So, there's 15 paid holidays counted on here, and then there's a birthday holiday.
Is that new, or is that?
Toby could still speak to this, but I think it's across the county. I think every department pretty much gets a birthday off. Yeah, but I think they didn't maybe get their birthday off before, and so I think that was like a discrepancy. Can I ask that, suspend the
Part of
rules?
the policy, just so that you
Ask to make sure that's right.
Sure.
Is that correct, Toby?
What was the question?
It's just adding the birthday off, but pretty much every other department does that, but right now, y'all don't get a birthday off, correct?
Well, we do, but it's not in the policy, and I wanted to put it in the policy to make verification.
Okay, yeah, so that's what I was just making sure. So that's in there, and I think that, you know, those things, you know, could be discussed, but, I mean, just to be clear, it does seem odd or unfair to make the highway department employees take off 2 hours of their pay and put it in, even though the money-wise, it just seems odd, because either that or they would come in for 2 hours on the day they were off.
No, I totally get it.
Just in thought.
Just to bring, I mean, the motion to defer from, just to clear with our, budget chairman.
Or no?
And so, and just to clarify, as far as like, we're not increasing maintenance of effort, it's just a budget request, and it's unknown. I think that's what the budget chairman's confusion is. So we're going to take a motion, and I got a motion, I got a second, and any further discussion, we'll take a vote. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Item D, accepting the review of the judicial magistrate program, I so move. Move to accept. Item D. It's pretty customary. Got a second by Commissioner Teacher. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, is this something they do every year, or is this, there's been questions raised about it, or where's this going? I've read it,
I'm going to defer to our law director's office. I don't know, our law director or our staff. I'm thinking.
I'll take the wind down there.
I am unclear on how the magistrate's programs work, because most of their funds come through court cost allocated items, and I'm not privy to whatever outlays they have or how they solicit for grants or money. So I'd have to get back with you on that.
Would you like to make an amendment, or would you like to?
No, I'm just trying to understand, sorry, I'm on the 347 pages, just trying to find the ad. There we go, finally, thank you. To determine if such a program is being conducted in accordance with law, I guess my question is there something that's been brought to the attention of the county commission, or law director, or is this just an educational thing, or what's our target that we're trying to get to?
I do know they have educational requirements and training that they are required to attend.
Correct.
Whether this falls within that, I'm not sure.
Tell me what's our intent, sorry, maybe I was misleading. Are we trying to learn about their program?
No, it would be for the magistrates to work within their program. I've got nothing to do with this.
So this is a request from them to us to oppose this meeting?
Yes, which is, I think, on the back.
Okay.
Is there anyone here from that office?
I don't believe so. This was something that was requested in the agenda from the law director's office, or passed through, so. I mean,
And maybe it's just all notice. Brings transparency, I guess we'll go forward.
you can choose to deny this, or you can choose to move it on to the full commission, if you, so, it's up to this committee, so.
When will it meet? It'll meet on the, committee, or commission meeting, right? Yeah. I just want to make sure we're not getting our wires crossed up here.
Yeah, I think their intent is just to get it to the full commission. That's what this notice is.
Do you have a problem with this program?
I'm trying to educate myself on how we got here and what the intent is and where we're going. That's all I was asking. Because it's on the night of the county commission.
Well, I think that's just
here, this is supposed to public hearing.
Yeah, that's
Hearing for what? Right, well, I mean, what are we gonna do?
I'm as confused as you are.
What are we gonna do when we get there? That's my question.
Yeah, I'll have to reach out to the chief magistrate on that.
Are there any decisions? So Mr. Draper can come and make it known of why?
Mr. Draper's the only one I would know to contact on that, and I won't have an answer for you this evening.
I mean, this is something the clerk's gonna have to announce. I guess if there's something we need to find out or something before then, we can move it and chairman can strike it the night of the agenda, or the night of the meeting, because that's where it's gonna wind up at.
Or somebody can bring it up from the board.
Right.
Either way.
Okay. I'm ready to vote, Mr. Chairman.
During the discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Carter.
Could Chairman of the commission enlighten us on this at all?
I have never been totally clear on this program. All of a sudden, it appeared before us at the county commission that what we were doing with people at the jail signing warrants was not what was going to be appropriate anymore. And we were told by Ms. Denon that we must do this, have a judicial magistrate program. And I always sort of get my back up a little bit when someone tells me you must do something, when I understand that other counties are not. Do all counties in the state of Tennessee have a judicial magistrate program?
In some form or fashion, most of them do.
Some form or fashion. They could have been maybe modified to what we were doing ourselves.
And it's statutorily governed, a good chunk of what they do, so, and they actually get the purview of some quasi-immunity that a judge would have based on how they issue temporary restraining orders and things of that nature.
Well, when this was first put in, it came very swiftly kind of a stealth operation, and if we had to do this, it's a must, but we got to rush. And I always get suspicious of anything about that. It's probably a very good program. I have a friend that is one of the magistrates. I haven't reached out to him to ask in detail about it, but sometime or another, I would like to hear more about this program and just why what we were doing was not acceptable, what do they do that's different, and so forth. But to answer your question, it was almost a rush job when it was done. And no offense to these people, they were chosen afterwards, but the program, the system was rushed through.
Well, maybe there's an opportunity to do just that. I mean, that's what it says, to examine and evaluate the program of judicial commissions. And maybe it's, doesn't sound like there's any decision to be made here, it's just a...
Do we know?
I think annually, I think that we have to approve this program. I think this is a matter of just approving the program.
That's what my understanding. We've done this in the past
year. So it's a matter of, we want this program, we approve it, and so forth. If we don't...
So there is a decision to come out of
If
it.
you look at the second half of that, to determine if such program is being conducted in accordance with law, so there has to be a decision that needs to be made there, I would say. Is that right?
So we gotta do it.
Well, now, Mr. Hyde just spoke about what we have to do. And I already said, well, with my hair poked up.
So my question is, I guess, Mr. Law Director, is anything on break if we were to defer this for a month? Or do we know the answer to that question?
Nobody's given me a reason to think one way or the other on that, so I would defer to the committee, whatever you think.
The motion on the floor is to move it to the full commission, so...
And I think that was the full intent, was to get it.
Excuse me a second. Commissioner Brown.
Do you know who's in charge of this?
Yeah, it's a magistrate would be Draper, and I've had some dealings with him, and I do know that there's been some recent filings that have concerned the issue of magistrates and their capacity to issue, which I've found nothing to think they can't, but this could be a product of people digging and poking at that process.
If that's the case, I would like to defer this a month so we can get some more, as our wise chairman says, insight of what is going on with this before we make a decision on the full commission floor. So that would be my motion.
You're making to amend the main motion.
Please.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Schoaf? Commissioner Hyde?
I think, my opinion is this could possibly be the best thing that we could do, most professional thing that we could do as a county. But no matter what decision we make here, I'd like to see the legislative committee invite the chief judicial magistrate here to just learn more about the program, because I know that previous to this, we had people that, another friend of mine who worked in the warrants department for a while was Dr. Wade Powers, who was academic dean at Ball State for many years and later a college president. But, they would be on call to go and sign a warrant, certain people each night to sign a warrant, and then would be paid accordingly. If they went to the jail to sign warrants on people if they were needed. The county's larger now, circumstances are somewhat different, but it seems to me like, I think, did I read that we have 9 of these full-time people now? So somewhere along the way, we're spending a great deal more money. I just like to learn more about it. I'm not knowledgeable enough now to really say.
We have a motion on the floor, we got a second.
I got one question for discussion. So, can someone clarify, remember in September, I believe it was, might have been October, commission meeting, I think it was October, that I believe this issue came up, and we were approving them, and we were gonna not approve them, and then it was like, no, this is an emergency, we had to do it, and they got put back on the agenda. Do you remember that?
I believe if my memory serves correctly, that's hard to do sometimes, but I believe that was the names that we said that was who we as the county body say that are our magistrates. And if we didn't do that, those persons will not be able to sign warrants.
Yes.
That's why we had to move forward with
And
that.
so, what my question is, will us deferring this make that kind of emergency situation happen?
I don't think so. It's, that's not what this is.
Just about a notice.
Okay, that's all, that's my only question.
I'm good at it, program.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll defer that to next month. Accepting the review of the District Magistrate Program and try to ask Mr. Todd Draper to come or speak with him before or have him come. Next resolution is item E, authorizing Sumner County to join the state of Tennessee and other local governments in amending the Tennessee State Subdivision Opioid Abatement Agreement and approving the related settlement agreements attached. I'm going to move for discussion. Second by Commissioner Rogers. Is there any discussion or any questions on this? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Item F, resolution to establish an updated OSHA program plan.
I'll move for discussion.
I'll second. Motion by Commissioner Show, second by Commissioner Mansfield. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, this was brought to me by the Law Director's Office, so I will let them speak to this. The OSHA.
Sorry, resolution behind.
Yeah, item,
Basically, what this is due to the nature of the employees and everything we have, we've got to implement and adopt some sort of OSHA, TOSHA, policy, and that's really what the purpose of this is, sandwiched in between all these pages, is to show that we're in compliance with their standards.
Basically, our risk management, am I correct in saying that?
That would be correct. And for auditing purposes at a later date, if something were to happen, we could show we've got an existing plan in play.
Commissioner Show.
Forgive my ignorance here. Is this, so a lot of this is about the description of the safety directors. We have, is this a county employee? Under employee complaint?
I'm not sure how the county's delegated overview. The mayor might know.
We go to the
more about that.
Yes.
Title IX.
Yes. Right.
That's the HR director.
We have one currently, in which the HR department is also
Risk management.
the risk man. So this is a duty that it's almost something that can be layered on to, as an additional duty for this employee.
Well, yes.
Is that, Mr. Mayor, is that
She
correct?
does that now.
Yeah, she's the one who I've had to communicate with, Miss, I forgot her last name, Cheryl. Yeah.
Okay. So her primary responsibility is HR.
I didn't hire her, so I'll put her.
Yeah, basically what, OSHA comes in and does an inspection. They'll pick a couple of departments and come in and do an inspection. And they do that each year, then do the report. Cheryl walks with them as they do their inspection.
Okay.
And that's really the extent of it. We do have the risk management with Kim White. She's also, they're both in the same office.
Got it. I'm just making, I'm just making sure that we're not signing ourselves up to add another activity.
So she has the additional duty of safety director.
Got it. That makes sense.
Any other questions? Got a motion, we got a second, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Carries. Item G, 2021 third resolution, Marshall had spoke, did a presentation back in October, I believe, and so he asked to come and speak to this tonight about this code resolution, and share a little bit with us on items, both G and H, so I shall move for discussion. Second by Commissioner Teachner, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Without objection, we're going to have Marshall come and share with us items G, 2021 code resolution, and H, which is an alternative to adopting Chapter 31, temporary special events, and Chapter 56, explosives and fireworks of the International Fire Code, the G&H. All right, Marshall, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner Mansfield, for putting it on the agenda tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My name's Marshall Rod. I've been with the Sumner County Building Code Department for 9 years. I haven't had the privilege of meeting the commissioners, but nice to meet you folks. While you do, I'd like to recognize our deputy building official up there, Terry Haynes. I didn't coin the term deputy building official, but that's what the state calls the second in charge. He's back on one and all, that's the nice, that's the deputy building professional. I recognize Gallagher's building official back now too. Ben Harris. Every few years, we're required by the state of Tennessee to update the building codes, and that's what brings us here tonight, is time for us to take a look at updating the building codes. Right now, we're in the 2015 building codes, and we want to migrate to the 2021 building codes. There has been some changes, but most of the changes that you'll find in our proposed adoption are minor residential changes, and I think it's a total of 28 changes. And most of them changes is when the inspectors come back from the field and say, look, this is not working here in Sumner County. You know, this may work up north or something, but it's not really working here. So that's mainly the reason most of that's on there, is customized for the needs of Sumner County. But the three weightier code changes, I really think we need to talk about this. I mean, I know time is sensitive right now, but like Chairman Mansfield talked about, the main changes we would like to bring to your attention is the energy code. The three codes that the state requires local jurisdictions to adopt, and that's the building codes, the energy codes, and the mechanical and plumbing codes. The energy code is driven by the federal government, just like when they drive and push for battery-operated cars instead of combustible engines. It's the same principle, but it's built into the energy codes, and we're required by the federal government as the state of Tennessee to adopt the energy code. But the state fire marshal is allowing us to pull out the parts of the energy code that where we wouldn't have to build homes out of 2x10 studs. If we adopted the energy code in its full standard, the contractors around here would have to build walls with 2x10 studs because they couldn't get enough insulation in the stud walls to comply with the 2021 codes. And another example is they require in the 2021 codes a ceiling value, R value of 60. 60. Right now, we're in 38. From 38, you can still deck your attic with storage when you use a 2x12. But if you insulate it with a blown insulation and the R value is 60, it's 23 inches deep. You couldn't even see it's just. Some of it's just ridiculous. That's why we're trying to pull some of this back. And
what do they want in the walls?
2x10.
What's the R rating that they're asking for in the walls?
The R rating is a 30.
In the walls.
And
You said ceiling was 60.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
That's why they're allowing us to go back to the 2009 energy tables and use that and then pull the 21s out. So that's the kind of things that we would definitely get pushed back from the contractors on if we adopt that. So we're asking that you replace the tables in the 2021 with the 2009 energy codes.
You said that was 2 feet blown insulation?
23 inches, yes. 23 inches.
I won't do that.
So you're at the code.
I'm at the code.
And the other thing I'd like to touch on, Commissioners, is the sprinkler requirements. In 2009, there was a real push from the largest and special interest groups to get sprinklers put in the 2009 residential building code. And the State Fire Marshal of Tennessee is allowing us to pull all that out too. We also pulled the sprinkler requirements out in the 2015 building code, so we want to continue that out. And some of the reasons is the water moratorium that we have in Sumner County, it would be kind of very difficult for people to get water, especially for sprinklers. The cost of sprinklers is $1.50 to $2 a square foot extra on the house. And it's just, in the water pressure, I just don't think that we can get the proper water pressure in the rural, the plateaus of Sumner County. So we would like to continue to keep the sprinklers out of the residential code book.
And if I may say something to that as well, you take an instance where, like this past Christmas, we had it really extremely cold weather for a pretty long time. If you're without power, all your pipes are going to freeze, and you're going to ruin your drywall in the attic and everything. In a residential scenario, it don't make a whole lot of sense around here to sprinkle houses for that reason too. You know, we have power outages out in the country, and in fact, we did have power outages back in December, and you can't back that up with auxiliary power.
We got several reports of sprinklers rupturing in the attic of residential, causing a lot of damage to Sumner County. And the last thing that I feel like it's important to bring to your attention is the 2021 International Fire Code. We have not adopted a fire code as of yet. And when I started doing the research about if it would be something that Sumner County would want to do, I finally come to the conclusion it might not be a good idea for Sumner County, and I'd like to give some reasons why. The fire code, from what I can tell, and I haven't spent a lot of time in the International Fire Code, but we would need extra staffing for one thing. We would need at least a fire marshal or at least a fire inspector on staff to enforce this code book. It talks about fire hydrants and fire access roads and building signs and open burning. These are things that are already found in the health and safety code and also the subdivision regulations. And I'm concerned that they're going to be in conflict with what we already have on books. And so what we did is we stepped back and we looked at, well, let's just maybe adopt Chapter 31, which is tents and membrane structures, and Chapter 56, explosive and fireworks. Because one of the main reasons we looked at adopting the fire codes was because when the planning regions was pulled back 3 or 4 years ago, it left the board with some of the fire tents and fire retailers that were once regulated under Gallatin and Hendersonville, but now there's nobody regulated them, except the state does some limited regulations on them. So that's the reason we looked at Chapter 31, tents and membrane structures, and Chapter 56, explosives and fireworks. And then we run into trouble with this too, looking at this, because Chapter 56, explosives and fireworks, they talk about blasting and they talk about fireworks and other explosive, and it's kind of like Solomon splitting the baby. I just couldn't separate them in that chapter, so it wasn't working for us just to adopt that chapter for fireworks. And I didn't think we wanted to get into permitting blasting because the state already does that. So we backed out on that too, and also I talked with Chairman Mansfield and about the tents and the membrane structures, and what we have to do is issue permits for tents over 400 square feet, whether it's a community tent or somebody in the school system is wanting to have some kind of program with a tent in it, and we just foresaw problems.
Not a big tent.
And the International Fire Code also says that if, it's in the 21s, it's not in there until you get to the 21s, and it says, any tent or membrane structure 1,000 square feet or larger has to be sprinkled. Yes, it has to be sprinkled, so we just figured, oh, that's a dead end road, that's not gonna go anywhere, so. After, I talked with, Chairman Mansfield, and what we did is we created a standalone application. It should have been in your packet. If not, I have some copies of them. And it's application for seasonal retail fireworks permits. And it has a place for, the retailer to put all the pertinent information on it, and it has the fee that, we would charge for a fireworks tent retailer. And actually, I got with Mid-America, and they helped me with this, and they're the ones that, initially, apparently I had fees too low, and they said, Marshall, you're too low on the fees. And, he said, you need to raise your fees so at least you'd be competitive with other counties and other cities. So I raised the fees, and you'll find what the fees that we recommend as part of this document. So,
They're starting on page 15.
notice that they would be, on this,
It's another, you gotta go past the resolution.
It's a ton of information on those.
Looks like this application. That's the rest of it, it's separate.
Yeah.
We're on item, H. So we're doing G and H right now, we're discussing both of those. So that's item H.
So what I'm asking is that we consider adopting the standalone document along with the, building code, books, but excluding the, International Fire Code for the reasons I've done my best to try to explain the reason why we should.
In the National Fire Code, you're referring to page 14,
Yeah.
which is pages 14 and 15.
15.
Item number 6.
Item number 6, yes.
Then, well, that was going to be, my motion was to strike that in its entirety, when we get to that point, but,
Strike item number 6.
well, I'm going to, two things. Well, first, I'm going to make a motion to, accept 2021 code resolution, but striking out item 6, which is on page 14, which is the entirety of that, chapter 31 tents and chapter 56 explosives and fireworks. So we're dealing with item number G right now on our agenda, 2021 code resolution, so I'm speaking only to that, so we're going to do this separately. So that's my motion. Do I have a second for that motion? Now, is there, for discussion, I think there might have been, I had a question to amend this motion on page 2 of this document dealing with the refunds. So, I guess the question,
Just to be clear, so what you're saying here is your motion is to approve
the 2021 code resolution
minus everything starting on page 14.
under number 6 until
All the
page
way
15.
Until page
Both
15,
those
up to
pages.
that's all of it? Or-
Well, up until it gets to number 7.
Got it.
Because I think that protects it. I mean, a lot of us went to the presentation Martin did a couple months ago, and so everything seemed pretty, we sat through that, I think it was about a 2-hour presentation or so. But my question came to page 2, that's why I don't want to make the motions yet, was on the refunds. There were some questions and concerns about that from commissioners of whether do we even need to give any refunds, just like you do it, I mean, just capture that. Versus, I think you changed it, increased it from 1,500 to 3,000, if I'm not mistaken, was it 1,500 prior?
I don't recall.
I don't know. Commissioner Rogers, I think you were there, do you remember that?
I think it was an increase, and then if they don't, and I have my notes here, it says if they sell the property, then it goes back to the owner. But
Ever request a refund, probably a half dozen times in the 9 years I've been here.
Yeah, we never.
And it's usually because something's been done.
Somebody asking them.
You know, somebody will pay adequate facility tax, but they won't build on it, and they'll sell it, somebody come in and pay it again a couple years later. It's been discovered, we've always gone to the county attorney to request a refund, but some things are obvious that they need a refund, in my opinion, you know, they double pay. And we put a safeguard in here, anything over $3,000, the attorney needs to get involved, but if that's too high, I certainly understand.
Well, my question came down to people who, I'll call it just speculating on properties, thinking they might get it rezoned, and when they don't, are they getting a refund?
The only time I
guess
I'll
someone
give
wants to
a
develop a lot more.
refund, Commissioner Mansfield, is if something's been double paid, and it's always been run through the county attorney for approval.
So,
I think we probably want to have that option, you know, like, just in case there's a mistake.
but can we clarify, is there possible to clarify that, say basically, the right says issue refunds on a case-by-case basis when the building official agrees that the refund is justified? Can we just say, if the only case that you've experienced it, if it's a case somebody double pays, I mean, is that acceptable for that situation? Like, if we make that, we explicitly say that in the resolution. So it makes sense what I'm asking?
Yes.
So is that possible to do that? I guess that there be any, I don't know if there's any problems with that. Because we don't want to cut off the ability for that to happen, but I also don't want to just encourage refunds for speculation.
I guess the reason we put it in there is because we didn't want to burden the county attorney going, you know, probably taking this time up when we know it's going to be a refund or something to double check.
And you're giving that example, so I mean, I don't know, I'll make a motion, I guess, we'll give it a second, to modify on page 2, I guess, it's section B, 1096.
If I may, I guess the better question to ask, is there ever a reason you've had to that wasn't under that situation?
Yes, it's been denied before, it sure has.
No, I'm saying, have you ever had to do a refund that was other than an overpayment?
There's been refund requests that we've said, that the former attorney said, no, that doesn't justify a refund. But the way I could have this worded in here, it would be the building official and his deputy, so it'd have to be two in the office. Me and Terry or whoever is in this position would have to agree upon it, that it's practical to give a refund.
That's the only question I had was, we didn't seem to be talking about any other reasons to do it.
I guess my only question is, on a case-by-case basis, what substantiates a case-by-case, I guess would be the only concern that I have. I mean, if it's an overpayment or a double payment, I think that language should be in there rather than something. You see what I'm saying? That was like you said, well, this is one of those cases. Well, what case? Well, that case, it's that case. It's small, but I think it would be better to have those in there.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the language to specify, instead of a case, basically refunds issued in the event of double payment or overpayment, whatever the right language is. Law director's office craft that or.
So it says the building official is authorized to issue refunds on 3,000 and strike on a case-by-case, instead would say, where overpayments occurred. Where overpayments.
In the event of overpayment or double payment.
So,
Just you could say overpayment, that would cover all.
Where overpayment occurred, whenever the building official and his or her deputy, so basically we're striking out on a case-by-case basis and amending that to replace the language or whenever overpayment occurs. Guys clear on that? So that's the motion. We got a second, Commissioner Keaton. Any other discussion on that amendment to, I'm going to clear this first. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, now back to the main motion of accepting this resolution in its entirety minus the, on page 14, International Fire Code, which covers tents, temporary vent structures, other membrane structures, and Chapter 56 explosives and fireworks. So that, we are striking that out on page 14 and 15 of item number 6. Question?
Does this include what we just discussed about the insulation and the fire sprinklers? Would that be?
Well, his recommendation is not.
Would that be, is that, if we vote?
This is dealing with tent and temporary structures and explosives. So it doesn't affect what he, it doesn't.
But it would still be in alignment with what he said about striking the sprinklers and which that's still fire code, and striking insulation.
Yeah, that language is already. It's already.
Carrying through your suggestions.
It says, look there, it says exclude the following section R309, that's by fire sprinklers, or R313, so it explicitly states your excellent.
Got it. I will make 100% sure before I vote on anything.
Correct. Commissioner?
Just on G,
We are on item G, yes, that's all we're on.
is that item H you're talking about?
No, we're still in G. We have not gotten H yet.
This talks about all that stuff.
Correct, we're going to get to that one next. We got an amendment of the main motion for striking out language on page 2 in a second, and we've already taken a vote on that. Now we're back to the main motion, which is accepting this resolution in its entirety, minus item number 6, which is International Fire Code for tents, temporary vent structures, and other membrane structures in Chapter 56, explosives and fireworks. That is, we're omitting that from this resolution, and that's the motion on the table. That has been made and seconded. Commissioner Rogers?
On page 16, item number 10, we still have the whole package of discussion. That number 10 there, I think, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that I made a note of this, off-site construction and planning. This was dealing with storage buildings, is that right?
Yes, that's what they are. A lot of times they'll bring, buildings into Sumner County and they want to live in them and nobody inspected them. They've been built outside. These three standards right here. Three standards, one of them is off-site inspection, off-site fanning and design. This one is for log homes, all produced by ICC. So they're not really code books, they're standards, giving guidelines and requirements whenever somebody builds a building, whether it's commercial, residential, off-site, and factory, it has to have certain standards and inspections.
So is there a way, so what does this mean for me as a homeowner if I want to bring a storage building onto my property?
Nothing, it's for dwellings only.
This is for like,
Manufactured modular homes or.
Modular homes.
Yeah, it keeps somebody from buying a building on skids and bring it in and sort of live in it.
But it doesn't specify that, which could be construed as a storage building, I think, as Commissioner Rogers' concern.
So, yeah, if I want to bring in what some call a tiny home, and bring a storage building in and I want to modify it, so then I have to fall back into compliance of having a structural engineer and all that done.
If it was built off-site, and it's defined as a tiny home or accessory dwelling unit, it would have a third-party inspection tag and saying that it meets the minimum standards of the building codes, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, and then, because once they bring something in, there's no way for us to really look at, especially if the walls are closed up and situated, there's nothing to look for.
Would you, would there be a problem here, Ms. Rhodes? If at the end of number 10, it says, the standards and documents, government agencies will make in conjunction with model codes to achieve uniformity and inspection and regulatory compliance with off-site construction.
You want on 11, or you said 10, but you got on 11?
Right, he's on 10. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, yeah, 10. Off-site construction of homes intended for residents. Now, say buildings intended for residents, maybe, or buildings intended for habitation. Intended for a building, like, is that something we could add to this?
Habitation, if we say residents, it would leave out, like if someone brought in a small building for a car lot, you know, like if they're selling used cars, they got a little storage unit operating out of. And so, I mean, just like, if we're wanting to make sure that that we're including that habitation or something like that needs to be in there, because you can use
Occupancy.
occupancy, yes, thank you.
The residential.
So I'll make a motion to amend.
All right.
What would be the best way to?
Residential dwelling unit.
Oh, we got a motion, we got to do it. Motion.
I'm just gonna motion to amend, add following links in number 10. Off-site construction of buildings intended for occupancy.
I'll second that.
All right. We have a proper motion by Commissioner Schoaf, a second by Commissioner Teachner to add to the end of number 10, off-site construction of buildings intended for occupancy. Correct?
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. It makes sense. That way, it excludes storage buildings.
Right.
Just one question, if we say the word intended, can I ask a question of the law director? Would intended, would it be, should we say used for occupancy? You understand what I'm saying by that? Like because what if someone's living in it and they say, well, we didn't intend to live here? I'm just trying to think legally.
I was just arguing, there ain't gonna be no perfect.
There's not, and then you run into the issue of were they occupying it as a residence, a business, or we start getting into a quagmire on what we're going to define as, basically. So I think occupancy will at least get you where the intent is.
Intended for occupancy.
Right.
I'm saying is intended a bad word for that.
No, if you're trying to delineate between that and your storage units,
Got it, okay.
yeah, I think you're fine there. And the intent's gonna be there as well without it being too specific.
Got it. Any other, we do have 10 minutes left in this meeting, we have a lot of other things to do, so you guys be mindful of that. Any other discussion on this? All right, so we have a motion and a second for this amendment, and item number 10, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We're back to the main motion, which is again adopting the 2021 code resolution minus what's on page 14 of removing anything dealing with the International Fire Code at Chapter 31 tents or Chapter 56 explosives and fireworks. Is there any more discussion?
And with this amendment.
With it, yeah, amendment, sorry, and with the language changes on page 2, and the language change on, page 16. Yeah. Okay.
Page 11, where it talks about the water now, it doesn't talk about PSI. Is there any PSI talking about, because I did have that problem when they stuck a 36-inch main from a 4-inch main across from my house there on
This is one of the zone changes that I feel the stretch to come back, because Marshall did put something in here about modifying the wording on the water hammer. I did not have an answer for you, sir.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Now we're on to item H, alternative to adopting Chapter 31 tents to very special events in Chapter 56 explosives and fireworks to International Fire Code attached. I'm going to make a motion to deny or to reject this amendment. And we're not the city of Gallatin or Hendersonville, we're the county. And this wasn't happening for county residents before, and I don't want to see it happening for county residents again, or people doing, we live in the county for a reason, because it's a little bit more free. And so I'm opposed to this, so my motion is to...
I'll second that. Anybody else think you?
Got a motion by Commissioner Mansfield and a second by Commissioner Schoaf, and move for discussion.
Is there any downside to this? Reject this, we're gonna do anything to break it?
I felt to follow y'all. We're talking about the International Fire Code.
We're talking about the,
Tents and temporary structures, and, this is limiting, this is basically charging people to do fireworks stands, as well as limiting people doing tents at their age.
Okay.
It's your application, I guess. Under their...
Okay, we're referring to the application, the standalone application?
Yes, sir. Yes.
What do we solve?
What motivated me to put this together, of course, was the retail fire work tents that used to be in the thinner regions that are now in our jurisdiction. That's what the motivation is. Should have legal look at it, review it, because I don't know, Commissioner, exposes us to any kind of liability or not.
People do fireworks tents in the county before this, so, you're just going to call it Gallatin Lawson Planning Region or Henderson Lawson Planning Region in White House.
Oh.
You're trying to, I understand you're trying to solve a problem for those areas, but where those cities were making money off this and restricting people on doing these things, but before then, you could be in the county and not have a fireworks permit.
Well, that's a valid point.
But
I'm not aware of any that was out in the county.
There was one along, right, yeah, there's several, so, that's why I'm against this, because it's like a solution looking for a problem, in my opinion, on this, as far as, and I'm just more sensitive on, people come to us in noise ordinance, like, if you want a noise ordinance, move to the city. If you want to restrict bed and breakfasts, move to the city. Like, I'm just not, just my constituents have been, when I knock doors, very clear about these types of things. He took over part of my district, and this is people are very vocal about these issues. So that's why I'm opposed to this.
Yes,
I don't want to restrict that freedom.
There was one abortions.
Yeah, one abortions as well, that's county. So there's a lot. So I got a motion, got a second. All in favor say aye of rejecting this. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion resolution does not carry forward. Citizen plaque placement of Shackle Island Volunteer Fire Department. We have Mrs. Connie O'Neill here. Thanks, Connie, basically what this is, and this is a motion by Commissioner Show to give us 10 more minutes, second by Commissioner Rogers. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? If you guys can just please not share this. This is a surprise that county and citizens are wanting to do to honor Chief Marty Bowers for 30 years of service as the Shackle Island Volunteer Fire Chief. So I know this is a public meeting, but if we can publicly be quiet about this, it'd be great. That's my request. So, a request that she's asking.
Okay, 1990 was when the volunteer fire department in Shackle Island started. And Marty apparently was one of the original people. And within about 2 or 3 years later, he became the fire chief. So he's been the fire chief for at least 30 years, and I think maybe even this year will be 31. Who you talk to as far as who remembers. But apparently a plaque like this in his recognition was started a while back, and it kind of fizzled, and we really felt like we needed to do something for him, because if I could bring in 100 people from Shackle Island, every one of them would have a story about Marty and the things that he's done for them. And we just would like to have this placed on the outside of the county building.
And this is something the citizens are paying for themselves. This is at no cost to the county, and they're just asking for permission to have this attached to the outside of the building. So moved by Commissioner Show, second by Commissioner Arnold.
Yeah, we're paying for it ourselves.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And y'all can come when we unveil it on the 25th.
It's a surprise.
Yeah, but that's May 25th.
May 25th.
Or 20th. Anyway, 25th.
We'll keep Marty from watching videos.
That's right.
80 minutes.
That's right. We'll probably have a reception at the...
Probably have a problem avoiding these meetings.
And we'll probably have a little reception afterwards at the historic Daniel Montgomery property.
Oh, wow, yeah, that's
Open house.
wonderful. I thank you, Ms. Cummings. All right, that carries. Last item, item J, County Mayor Isabella requested to put on the item agenda, approve, outgoing EMS chief receiving his Class A uniform. So moved by Commissioner Show. Got a second? Second by Commissioner Rogers. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Number 10, commission recognition. Are there any of these that we're going to be canceling? We don't know what's going to happen, but I'll make a motion to group and approve A by B. Second by Commissioner Show. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Item 11, zoning. This is again just a docketing issue that'll go before the full commission. It looks like this is the first month we docketed. Next month will be April, and it'll come before the full commission in May. And Commissioner Rogers said he wanted to speak to this.
We get not trying to run a meeting, we get a motion, or we need a motion?
We don't, it's docketing, there's no motion for this.
So since I stood up and opposed one a couple of months ago that's very similar to this one, I just wanted everybody to know that I'm in favor of this. And the reason being is, this is very much different than the one I was opposed to. This one is on Scotty Parker Road, which is the old Highway 109. This business is already there and established. I don't think we have any clearing of woods or anything that's going to cause any issues there. I'm for this one. And Mr. Chairman, I don't know if we can or not, but this business, and this business type is already there. Is there a way we can waive the second reading and proceed, and we'll go ahead and let this go to the commission floor? I mean, I don't know that this business is already there, and basically, from my understanding, and I see Greenland here, from the only thing that I understand is they're wanting to add another building to the already existing business that's there. That's what brings this before this bill.
Well, I mean, go ahead.
I guess I'd say one, is the businesses, I'm assuming, operating under a plan of development like itself, and it wasn't a situation like we had previously where somebody was operating. No, and in fact, from my understanding is he's been paying the commercial taxes and stuff on this for years. It was prematurely, and now it's the storage building on the back side of it, and that's his plan. From what I understand, it's just to continue the same businesses you have in the same area, same lot.
Well, according to our rules in the legislative, it goes through 2 readings in legislative before it goes to full commission. So, we can make a motion to suspend.
Well, we don't have anything for discussion.
I know that you wanted to suspend the rules, but we're talking about suspending our standing rules and procedure as a commission for that. I mean, as a committee, I think we can do that. I might default to the Chairman Hyde on this a little bit, but this is statutorily, there is no requirement that we have to do the 2 readings, I don't believe, in the legislative. And so, but we would need to unanimously approve, 2/3 to suspend, required to suspend this, go into a second reading of legislative. And I haven't looked into this yet, so I'm not sure I'd be in favor of doing that right now, so that's just me.
Well, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and carry it. I mean, if it fails, it fails.
So you want to make a motion to suspend our rules for having a second docketing of this in legislative? So that's the motion. Do we have a second?
Can I ask a reason?
Let's get a second on the floor first, if anybody needs a second. Second by Commissioner Brown, by Commissioner Jimmy.
What is it, what's the benefit for the property owner?
So he can go ahead and go to work, or he knows what he has to do in order to get it going. I mean, it's the same business already there. He's just wanting to add another building and go to work. The same, it would be like adding another room to a flower shop. And they just want to add another building to an already pre-existing storage facility.
Is he in that big a rush?
I can't answer for him, I'm just saying if we're...
You're in a rush, all right? I mean, I don't know.
I don't care.
Okay. I haven't looked into this yet,
So full transparency, it's not even in my district. I'm just thinking, we've got a man here, the business is already there, the business is already operating, he just wants to add one more building. I'll let government hold the private sector up, put him on through. You're just asking to suspend the rules, this one. This one, to go to the second reading, or to go to the full commission.
Full commission next time.
What's it? I'm not aware, I as a commissioner, am not aware of anything that would offset it. It's a storage unit, it's already operating.
So I haven't driven out there, but, I mean, the only thing I have going on is just completely, and I've never had any reason to act work, but the only thing I'm going on is just exactly what you're saying. So that makes me nervous about suspending anything just because of that. But, I mean, I understand what your rationale is.
And the only thing I can say is whereas before, where I was opposed to the other one, is because it's on the road, it's on a 4-lane highway, we'll have to put a turning lane in. This one's not, this one is on the old Highway 109. It's not going to require a turning lane, I don't believe. The map's attached. It's totally different circumstances, in my opinion.
And you're talking about the one that was, the other one on that that was kind of, yeah.
Yeah. That was going to the left, going to the left.
Sure. Any?
Or any opposition to this at all? I don't know everything I know is posted through. I mean, the purpose of somebody needs to speak to that, but.
This is kind of questions over a little bit.
I mean, the purpose of this is to provide an opportunity, I think, to say, hey, this is coming, and we're basically kind of cutting that off. No, that's right. Well, I'm not saying regard, I'm just, I know that some of it wasn't. Okay. Right, Commissioner Butler, you have a comment, Commissioner?
I was at the planning commission meeting for this, and then I was curious about it because I drove over there to look at it. Have any of you been to the site? Well, it's not licensed as a business, and so he is paying, if he is paying commercial property taxes, that's fantastic. But, I think he should have the 2 readings because he's been operating he just got permission to put a pole barn, and there are multiple vehicles in there. There's a bucket truck, a wrecked car that's parked there. There are dumpsters in the front next to a pet cemetery. And the effluent, the collected effluent from the cemetery washes, it's about 4 feet high, washes right through that lot, and it's real residential right now, and all of those vehicles are parked, they're on gravel and dirt. So that water washes through there to go into the buildings, goes probably under the buildings, takes anything that leaks out of those into the watershed. I have multiple issues with it. I would like to see it have its regular 2 readings. Thank you.
I wouldn't be able to vote. You still have vote or you want to draw your motion?
I was withdrawing my
Okay, motion is strong. All right, so we'll send that next one. One more motion. To adjourn. All in favor, say aye.